Did you know that in the medieval era, from roughly 500 to 1500 AD, long before modern universities, women were leading the charge in education and scholarship? What if I told you that some of the most influential minds of the Middle Ages were women living behind convent walls? Number 12. Whitby Abbey, Northumberland, England. Far on the rugged coastline of what is now Northumberland, England, stood Whitby Abbey, a beacon of learning in the early medieval period. Founded around 657 AD by the formidable Abbess Hilda, a princess of Northumbrian royalty, this double monastery housed both monks and nuns. Yet it was the intellectual prowess and administrative genius of its female leadership and inhabitants that truly defined its legacy as a scholastic powerhouse. Hilda, a figure of immense wisdom and spiritual authority, meticulously ensured that the pursuit of knowledge was not just an option but a core tenet of life within the abbey walls. The scriptorium at Whitby was renowned not merely for its output of religious texts, but for the meticulous care and artistic skill evident in each illuminated manuscript. Here scribes, many of them nuns, dedicated countless hours to copying, illustrating, and preserving works that would otherwise have been lost to time. Their hands, guided by a deep devotion and an equally profound respect for scholarship, helped to safeguard the written heritage of the early Christian world. Curriculum at Whitby was broad, covering subjects typically associated with the liberal arts of the era. Nuns studied Latin, the language of scripture and scholarship, alongside Greek, a more unusual pursuit for the time, allowing them access to a wider range of classical and theological texts. The study of arithmetic was essential for understanding the complexities of the liturgical calendar, particularly for calculating the date of Easter, a subject of significant debate and division in the early English Church. Geometry and astronomy were also part of their intellectual pursuits, providing frameworks for comprehending the natural world and the cosmos. Beyond these foundational subjects, theology was, of course, paramount. The nuns at Whitby delved deeply into biblical exegesis, the study of the Church Fathers, and the development of Christian doctrine. They were not merely passive recipients of knowledge but active participants in theological discourse, often engaging in lively discussions that honed their critical thinking skills. One of Whitby's most enduring contributions to learning was its role in fostering native English literature. It was within Whitby's walls that Caedmon, considered the first English poet, whose name is known, found his voice. Bede, the great Anglo-Saxon historian, recounted how Caedmon, an unlettered cowherd, was inspired to sing sacred verses in his own tongue after receiving a divine dream. Abbess Hilda recognized his extraordinary gift and welcomed him into the community, encouraging him to translate biblical narratives into Old English verse. This patronage was a significant act, elevating the vernacular language to a position of respect for sacred expression and demonstrating the abbey's commitment to disseminating religious knowledge in an accessible format for the common people. The nuns likely played a role in copying and preserving Caedmon's works, ensuring his poetic contributions survived. Their work in the scriptorium extended beyond mere copying. They were actively involved in textual preservation, collation, and sometimes original composition. The intellectual climate at Whitby was not limited to book learning. The nuns were also engaged in practical applications of their knowledge. They possessed a deep understanding of medicinal herbs and their properties, cultivating gardens within the abbey grounds for the production of remedies. This practical knowledge was crucial for the health and well-being of the community and its surrounding populace. The study of natural philosophy, though integrated into theological frameworks, allowed them to observe and categorize the natural world around them. Furthermore, the abbey served as a significant center for artistic production, particularly in the creation of illuminated manuscripts and devotional objects. The exquisite artistry found in surviving examples attributed to the Whitby School reflects the high level of skill and artistic training available to the nuns. Their understanding of design, color theory, and intricate calligraphy turned books into works of art, further enhancing their educational value. Whitby's intellectual influence radiated outwards. It was not an isolated institution, but a hub of intellectual exchange. Scholars and pilgrims from across Anglo-Saxon England and even from the continent visited the abbey seeking spiritual guidance, scholarly discussions, and access to its rich library. The Synod of Whitby, held in 664 AD, a pivotal moment in English church history that decided the calculation of Easter and the adoption of Roman rather than Celtic Christian practices, took place within the abbey's precincts. While primarily a political and ecclesiastical gathering, its very location at Whitby speaks volumes about the abbey's standing as a respected center of authority and intellectual debate. Abbess Hilda's presence and influence at such a significant event underscore the respect accorded to female leadership and scholarship at Whitby. The abbey provided an environment where women could not only pursue personal intellectual growth, but also contribute significantly to the broader intellectual and religious landscape of their time. The rich tapestry of learning woven within its walls remained a testament to the power of monastic education, particularly as championed and nurtured by its extraordinary abbesses and the diligent nuns under their care. Number 11. Barking Abbey, Essex, England. Just east of London, Barking Abbey stood as another testament to female intellectual prowess in early medieval England. Founded in the late 7th century also as a double monastery, it quickly distinguished itself as a major center of learning and spiritual life. Like Whitby, Barking Abbey benefited from the leadership of highly educated and influential abbesses, such as Hilda, who was praised by the Venerable Bede for her learning and piety. The abbey's strategic location, not far from the emerging centers of power, allowed it to become a significant repository of knowledge and a training ground for noblewomen and others seeking rigorous education. The very architecture of the abbey, as documented in historical records, suggested a community built not only for spiritual devotion, but also for the pursuit of intellectual and administrative excellence. Presence of well-appointed scriptoria and extensive libraries was a clear indicator of the emphasis placed on scholarship. Curriculum at Barking Abbey mirrored and in some ways surpassed the intellectual rigor found in contemporary male monasteries. Nuns engaged in the study of Latin, not just for liturgical purposes, but as a scholarly language, allowing them to read classical authors and theological treatises. They also delved into Greek and, more rarely, Hebrew, indicating a deep commitment to accessing primary source texts and engaging with diverse intellectual traditions. Mathematics was studied for its practical applications in chronology and architecture, while astronomy was pursued for understanding the celestial movements and their relation to religious calendars. The natural sciences, as understood in the medieval context, were also a part of their studies, encompassing an observation and classification of the natural world, often with a theological underpinning. Medical texts were copied and studied, and the nuns applied this knowledge in caring for the sick within the abbey and sometimes beyond its walls. One of Barking Abbey's distinguishing features was its reputation for producing highly literate and intellectually sophisticated nuns. Abbess Hilda, for example, was known for her deep theological insights and her correspondence with leading ecclesiastical figures of her day. It is documented that she maintained a thriving intellectual community where debate and discussion were encouraged, fostering an environment of active learning rather than rote memorization. The nuns were encouraged not only to copy texts, but to understand them deeply, to analyze their arguments, and to contribute to the intellectual discourse of their time. Their literary output was significant, ranging from devotional works to hagiographies and even historical chronicles. While much of their original writing may not have survived with specific attribution, the sheer volume and quality of the manuscripts produced at Barking speak to a vibrant intellectual culture. The scriptorium at Barking Abbey was a hive of activity. Nuns, trained in the demanding art of calligraphy and illumination, painstakingly transcribed manuscripts. These were not simple copies. They were often works of art, adorned with intricate initial letters, vibrant colors, and detailed illustrations that added depth and beauty to the texts. Production of such high-quality books was a testament to the advanced artistic and technical skills possessed by the nuns. They worked with precious pigments, vellum, and intricate tools, demonstrating a mastery of their craft. This dedication to book production ensured the preservation and dissemination of knowledge during a period when books were rare and highly valued commodities. The Abbey's library grew with each new manuscript, produced or acquired, becoming a significant repository of knowledge that attracted scholars and students. Beyond their direct academic pursuits, the nuns of Barking Abbey played a crucial role in the social and cultural landscape of their time. They provided education for girls from noble families, imparting not only religious instruction but also literacy, numeracy, and a broad understanding of the world. These young women, upon leaving the abbey, would carry their education into their own families and communities, disseminating the intellectual values learned at Barking. The abbey also served as a center of patronage for arts and crafts, commissioning works and supporting artisans, further contributing to the cultural vibrancy of the region. The very survival of important theological texts, such as those by Bede and Aldhelm, is sometimes attributed to the meticulous copying and preservation efforts of communities like Barking. The enduring legacy of Barking Abbey is not just its spiritual devotion, but its unwavering commitment to intellectual inquiry and the education of women, making it a pivotal institution in the intellectual history of early medieval England. Its walls held a dynamic community of women who, through their scholarship and dedication, helped to shape the intellectual contours of their era. Number 10. Shaftesbury Abbey, Dorset, England. Shaftesbury Abbey, founded in 888 AD by King Alfred the Great for his daughter Aethelgifu, became one of the wealthiest and most influential nunneries in medieval England. Its royal patronage ensured a continuous flow of resources, allowing the abbey to amass an impressive library and support a vibrant intellectual community. From its earliest days, Shaftesbury was more than a spiritual retreat. It was a significant educational institution, particularly for women of noble birth. The abbesses, often themselves from aristocratic families, were highly educated and astute administrators, guiding the abbey to become a center of both piety and profound scholarship. The physical layout of the abbey, even in its ruins, hints at the grand scale of its operations, including spaces dedicated to study and the copying of texts. Curriculum at Shaftesbury was extensive, reflecting its status and the intellectual aspirations of its residents. Nuns pursued a rigorous study of Latin, enabling them to engage with the vast body of theological, philosophical, and historical texts available in the language of the Church. They also learned Greek, providing access to original New Testament scriptures and classical philosophical works, a rare accomplishment for the time. Arithmetic was essential for managing the abbey's vast estates and for understanding complex liturgical calculations. Astronomy, often intertwined with astrology in medieval thought, was also studied, reflecting an interest in the celestial sphere and its perceived influence. Music was a central part of convent life, and the nuns were highly skilled in chant and composition, with musical theory being an important academic pursuit. This blend of practical and theoretical knowledge prepared them not just for spiritual life, but for intellectual engagement with the broader world. The library at Shaftesbury Abbey was legendary, housing a wide array of manuscripts. These included not only liturgical books and theological treatises, but also works of classical literature, history, and early scientific texts. The scriptorium was active, with nuns meticulously copying and illuminating manuscripts, ensuring the preservation and dissemination of knowledge. Their work in the scriptorium was highly skilled, involving the preparation of vellum, the mixing of pigments, and the precise art of calligraphy. Many of these copied texts were not just for internal use, but were also circulated to other monastic houses, or even to royal courts, highlighting the abbey's role as a major intellectual hub. The quality of the manuscripts produced at Shaftesbury speaks to the high standards of education and craftsmanship maintained within its walls. One of the most notable figures associated with Shaftesbury was St. Edward the Martyr, whose relics were transferred to the abbey in 979 AD. The abbey became a major pilgrimage site, attracting devotees and scholars alike. The cult of St. Edward was actively promoted by the nuns, who contributed to his hagiography and the dissemination of his story. This act of writing and narrative construction demonstrates their engagement with historical record-keeping and the shaping of religious narratives, which required significant literary and theological skill. The nuns were not merely copyists, but often authors, compilers, and editors of religious texts and historical accounts. Their scholarly output included hymns, prayers, and sometimes even chronicles that documented events relevant to the abbey and the wider kingdom. The educational role of Shaftesbury Abbey extended beyond its own community. It educated the daughters of the English nobility, providing them with an unparalleled intellectual and cultural upbringing. These young women learned not only academic subjects, but also literacy, numeracy, and a broad understanding of the world. Many of them would go on to become powerful abbesses of other convents, or influential figures in aristocratic households. The abbey's role in shaping the minds of future generations of noblewomen bestows its profound influence on medieval English society. It was a place where female intellect was nurtured and celebrated, allowing women to wield significant power and influence in a world often dominated by men. The nuns at Shaftesbury engaged in complex administrative tasks, managing vast estates and significant wealth, which required a high degree of literacy, numeracy, and legal understanding. Their sophisticated grasp of legal and financial matters was as impressive as their scholarly achievements, illustrating the multifaceted nature of their learning. Shaftesbury Abbey remained a powerful and respected institution for centuries, until its dissolution in the 16th century. Its dissolution led to the destruction of its magnificent library and the scattering of its precious manuscripts, making it difficult to fully reconstruct its intellectual life. However, historical records and the surviving fragments of its legacy confirm its pivotal role as a center of learning, where women pursued knowledge with rigor and dedication, contributing significant. The echoes of their scholarly pursuits, their chants, and their diligent work in the scriptorium resonate through history, affirming Shaftesbury as a stronghold of female education. Number 9. Fontefraud Abbey, Anjou. Fontefraud Abbey, established in 1101 by Robert of Arbrisel in the Loire Valley of France, was unique among medieval monastic institutions. It was a double monastery, housing both monks and nuns, but remarkably, it was always governed by an abbess. This radical structure, where the male branch was subordinate to the female, made Fontefraud an extraordinary center of power and learning for women. The abbesses, often drawn from royal or aristocratic families, were highly educated and politically astute, presiding over an expansive monastic order that eventually included dozens of dependent priories. This organizational complexity required a significant intellectual and administrative capacity from its female leaders and the community they oversaw. Curriculum at Fontefraud was designed to foster both spiritual devotion and intellectual rigor. Nuns were immersed in the study of Latin, essential for liturgy and scholarship. They engaged with classical texts, patristic writings, and contemporary theological works. Greek was also studied, providing direct access to a wider range of philosophical and religious thought. Mathematics was a practical necessity for the abbey's extensive land management and financial administration, and also served as a tool for understanding the order of the cosmos. Astronomy was pursued, linked to both theological contemplation and the practicalities of timekeeping. Music was a cornerstone of the Fontefraud experience. The nuns were renowned for their exquisite chanting and developed a sophisticated understanding of musical theory and composition. The Abbey's scriptorium was prolific, producing not only liturgical books but also historical chronicles, legal documents, and literary works. The library at Fontefraud was extensive and meticulously maintained, reflecting the Abbey's commitment to scholarship. It housed a diverse collection of manuscripts, including theological treatises, classical literature, medical texts, and philosophical works. The nuns served as scribes, illuminators, and binders, ensuring the creation and preservation of these precious texts. Their artistic skill, particularly in manuscript illumination, was highly regarded, turning functional books into beautiful works of art. The meticulous nature of their work contributed directly to the dissemination of knowledge across the region. Their attention to detail was not just aesthetic, but also intellectual, as they were often tasked with collating different versions of texts and correcting errors, requiring a deep understanding of the content. The intellectual life at Fontefraud was not confined to internal study. The abbesses, as leaders of a vast order, were engaged in extensive correspondence with other religious houses, secular rulers, and scholars across Europe. This network of communication facilitated the exchange of ideas, texts, and intellectual trends. Eleanor of Aquitaine, a powerful queen and patron of the arts, chose Fontefraud as her final resting place, a testament to the abbey's prestige and intellectual standing. Her presence, and that of other royal and noble women who resided there, further solidified its reputation as a place of sophisticated learning and refinement. The nuns often served as scribes and record keepers for royal families, demonstrating their advanced literacy and administrative skills. Fontefraud's unique governance structure meant that its abbesses were not just spiritual leaders, but also powerful administrators, judges, and sometimes even political mediators, managing vast estates, numerous priories, and a complex workforce required a profound understanding of law, economics, and diplomacy. These practical skills were rooted in the intellectual training received within the abbey. The nuns were involved in legal disputes, financial transactions, and the oversight of building projects, all of which demanded a high level of literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving abilities. Their education equipped them to navigate the complexities of a highly interconnected medieval world, enabling them to assert their authority and protect the interests of their widespread order. The intellectual contributions of Fontefraud's nuns extended to original composition. While much of their work may have been anonymous or lost, it is known that they wrote devotional texts, hagiographies, and historical accounts relevant to their order. The very nature of their unique administrative model, which placed women in charge of men, likely sparked theological and philosophical discussions within the community about gender roles, authority, and spiritual leadership, further enriching their intellectual discourse. Fontefraud Abbey stands as a powerful example of a medieval institution where female intellect was not only tolerated, but actively celebrated and empowered, demonstrating how women could exert profound influence on both the spiritual and secular spheres through their learning and leadership. The lasting impression of Fontefraud is that of a place where knowledge and power converged, all under the guidance of remarkable women. Number 8. Las Huelgas, Burgos, Spain. The Royal Monastery of Las Huelgas de Burgos, founded in 1187 by King Alfonso VIII of Castile and his wife Eleanor of England, quickly rose to become one of the most powerful and wealthy female monastic institutions. Unically, its abbesses held quasi-episcopal powers, meaning they could exercise jurisdiction over numerous churches and villages, appoint priests, and even hear confessions, privileges usually reserved for bishops. This extraordinary autonomy demanded that the nuns and their abbess possess not only deep spiritual wisdom, but also exceptional intellectual capabilities, particularly in law, administration, and theology. The grandeur of the monastery's architecture itself was a statement of its immense prestige and its role as a center for royal patronage and learning. Curriculum at Las Huelgas was designed to cultivate a sophisticated intellectual elite. Nuns were immersed in the study of Latin, the language of scholarship and liturgy, but also pursued Castilian, the vernacular, for administrative and literary purposes. They studied Greek and even some Arabic, reflecting Spain's unique, more intellectual environment and providing access to a broader range of scientific and philosophical texts. Mathematics was essential for managing the vast estates, overseeing financial transactions, and understanding complex astronomical calculations for the liturgical calendar. Astronomy, often intertwined with natural philosophy, was also part of their rigorous studies, contributing to their understanding of the cosmos. The monastery's scriptorium was a hive of activity, producing beautiful manuscripts that ranged from liturgical books to royal charters and historical chronicles. The library at Las Huelgas was celebrated, housing an impressive collection of manuscripts that reflected the diverse intellectual interests of the community. These included theological commentaries, legal codes, medical treatises, philosophical works, and even texts on falconry, a popular aristocratic pastime. The nuns were highly skilled scribes, illuminators, and binders, painstakingly creating and preserving these precious books. Their artwork, particularly in the illuminated manuscripts, demonstrated a high level of technical proficiency and artistic sensibility, adding beauty and value to the intellectual content. The precision required for copying legal documents and royal charters underscored their meticulous attention to detail and their understanding of formal language. The intellectual life at Las Huelgas was deeply intertwined with its administrative and political functions. The abbess, as a powerful feudal lord, engaged in extensive correspondence with kings, popes, and other powerful figures across Europe. This required not only sophisticated literacy, but also a keen understanding of diplomacy, legal precedent, and political maneuvering. The nuns, often acting as secretaries and advisors to the abbess, played a crucial role in drafting these important documents and maintaining detailed archives. Their knowledge of canon law and civil law was paramount in managing their extensive jurisdiction and adjudicating disputes. They were essentially operating a small, highly effective government within the monastery walls. Las Huelgas also played a significant role in the intellectual and cultural life of the Castilian court. It served as a burial site for royalty and a place of retreat and education for princesses and noblewomen. These connections brought a constant influx of new ideas and expanded the monastery's sphere of influence. The nuns educated these noblewomen, providing them with a comprehensive education that encompassed not only religious instruction, but also history, literature, music, and the arts. This high level of education prepared these women for influential roles in their own households, and potentially at court, disseminating the intellectual values fostered at Las Huelgas. The monastery's musical traditions were particularly rich, with its own unique liturgical rites and a renowned choir, indicating a deep study and practice of music, theory, and performance. The nuns of Las Huelgas also engaged in original scholarship and record-keeping. They compiled detailed chronicles of royal events, genealogies, and the history of their own order, providing invaluable historical sources. Their meticulous record-keeping extended to economic and administrative documents, prodding their advanced numeracy and organizational skills. The intellectual rigor of the community ensured that these records were not just compiled but analyzed and understood, providing a solid foundation for their extensive administrative duties. Las Huelgas stands as a formidable example of a medieval convent where women, through their profound learning and exceptional administrative capabilities, wielded immense power and exerted a lasting influence on the religious, political, and intellectual. Their legacy reveals a community where scholarship and authority were inextricably linked, all within the serene yet powerful confines of the cloister. Number 7. Helfta, Saxony, Anhalt, Germany. The Cistercian convent of Helfta established in 1229 in what is now Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, may not have been a grand royal foundation, but it became an extraordinary wellspring of mystical theology and intellectual inquiry in the 13th century. It nurtured some of the most influential female intellectuals and mystics of the High Middle Ages: Mechhild of Magdeburg, Gertrude the Great, and Mechhild of Hackeborn. Their collective literary output and profound spiritual insights transformed Helfta into a vibrant center of theological innovation and deeply personal scholarship. The environment fostered at Helfta encouraged not just intellectual development, but a unique blend of scholarly rigor and profound spiritual experience, demonstrating how piety and intellect were seen as complementary paths to understanding. The curriculum at Helfta focused intensely on theology, scripture, and mystical contemplation. Nuns studied Latin diligently to access the vast body of theological texts and to compose their own works. Unlike some convents that emphasized administrative or classical studies, Helfta's intellectual focus was primarily on internal spiritual development and the exploration of the divine. This deep theological engagement led to a profound understanding of scripture, patristic writings, and scholastic philosophy. While formal mathematics or astronomy might not have been as central as in some other institutions, the nuns engaged in a rigorous intellectual discipline focused on understanding the divine order and the human soul. Their literary pursuits were driven by a desire to express their spiritual experiences and share their theological insights. The scriptorium at Helfta was crucial for disseminating the works of its prominent mystics. Gertrude the Great, for instance, compiled her experiences and teachings in the Herald of Divine Love, a masterpiece of medieval spirituality and literature. Mechhild of Hackeborn's visions and instructions were recorded in the Book of Special Grace. Mechhild of Magdeburg's The Flowing Light of the Godhead, written in German, made complex mystical concepts accessible to a broader audience. Nuns in the scriptorium painstakingly copied these works, ensuring their preservation and wider circulation. This was not just a clerical task. It required a deep understanding of the theological content and often involved collaboration between the mystics and their scribe. The act of writing and copying was itself a form of spiritual discipline, demanding immense concentration and dedication. The intellectual contributions of the Helfta mystics extended beyond recording personal revelations. Gertrude the Great was an accomplished scholar, well-versed in Latin scripture and the writings of the Church Fathers. Her theological depth is evident in her reflections on liturgy, divine love, and the spiritual life. Mechhild of Hackeborn, known for her musical gifts, also possessed profound theological insights that she shared through her visions and teachings. Mechhild of Magdeburg, remarkable for writing in the vernacular, bridged the gap between academic theology and popular piety, making complex spiritual ideas accessible to a wider audience. Their intellectual work was characterized by a synthesis of personal experience, biblical exegesis, and a keen analytical mind, pushing the boundaries of traditional theological discourse. The nuns at Helfta engaged in a vibrant intellectual community where discussions about theology, mysticism, and the spiritual life were commonplace. The Abbess Gertrude of Hackeborn created an environment that encouraged intellectual curiosity and spiritual exploration, providing her nuns with access to books and opportunities for study. This intellectual freedom, combined with a disciplined monastic life, allowed for an unprecedented blossoming of female scholarship focused on the inner life and the nature of God. The influence of Helfta spread far beyond its walls through the circulation of its mystics' writings, impacting spiritual movements and theological thought across Europe. Copies of their books were cherished in other convents and monasteries, providing spiritual guidance and intellectual inspiration. While not a university in the modern sense, Helfta functioned as a specialized center of higher learning for women, particularly in the field of mystical theology. The depth of their theological understanding, their literary output, and their profound influence on spiritual thought attest to the rigorous intellectual environment within the convent. The nuns at Helfa demonstrated that scholarship could be deeply intertwined with spiritual experience, and that women could be leading figures in the intellectual and religious landscape of their time. Their legacy is a powerful reminder of the diverse forms that medieval learning could take, and the profound intellectual contributions made by women in monastic settings. Number 6. Hohenberg Abbey, Alsace, France, now Mont Saint-Odile. Perched atop Mont Saint-Odile in Alsace, Hohenberg Abbey, refounded in the 12th century by Abbess Hilda of Landsberg, became an outstanding center of knowledge and artistic creation. Hilda, a highly educated and visionary leader, transformed Hohenberg into a thriving intellectual hub renowned primarily for a monumental work known as the Hortus Delicarum, or Garden of Delights. This extraordinary encyclopedia, compiled under her direct supervision, stands as a powerful testament to the intellectual pursuits and artistic talents of the nuns at Hohenberg. The abbey itself, with its commanding views and secluded location, provided an ideal environment for concentrated scholarly and artistic work. The intellectual life at Hohenberg revolved around a comprehensive curriculum encompassing theology, classical literature, and the arts. Nuns were proficient in Latin, the language of scholarship, and likely familiar with other European languages, given the region's cultural crossroads. The creation of the Hortus Delicarum required extensive knowledge across multiple disciplines. It contained excerpts from classical authors, patristic writings, and contemporary theological texts, demonstrating a broad scope of literary and intellectual engagement. The work also included material on natural history, astronomy, and medicine, showing an interest in the empirical world, albeit framed within a theological context. Music theory was another important aspect of their studies, as the Hortus also contained numerous musical notations, indicating a sophisticated understanding of medieval harmony and melody. The Hortus Delicarum was more than just a compilation. It was an ambitious pedagogical tool designed to educate the nuns of the community. Its textual content was supplemented by hundreds of exquisite miniature illustrations, many of which are considered masterpieces of Romanesque art. These illustrations were not merely decorative. They served as visual aids, clarifying complex theological concepts, illustrating biblical narratives, and even depicting allegorical scenes. The creation of such a work required an immense collaborative effort from the nuns in the scriptorium. They were skilled scribes, artists, and possibly even translators and compilers, working together under Hilda's astute direction. The meticulous detail, vibrant colors, and thematic coherence of the Hortus attest to their high level of training and dedication. Hilda of Landsberg herself was an intellectual powerhouse. She was not only the compiler and editor of the Hortus, but also composed original texts, including poems, prayers, and theological commentaries. Her prefaces to the Hortus reveal her profound theological understanding and her commitment to education. She designed the work as a living encyclopedia, constantly updated and refined, to provide her nuns with a comprehensive education in all branches of sacred and secular learning. This educational philosophy positioned Hohenberg as a leading intellectual center, attracting noble women seeking an unparalleled education. The abbess's leadership was central to fostering this scholarly environment. The influence of Hohenberg Abbey through the Hortus Delicarum extended far beyond its walls. While the original manuscript was tragically destroyed during the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, detailed copies and descriptions survived, allowing scholars to reconstruct its contents and appreciate its significance. The Hortus served as a pedagogical model for other convents and monastic schools, demonstrating the value of visual learning and comprehensive textual compilation. It was a testament to the intellectual capabilities of medieval women and their ability to create original, complex works of scholarship and art. The fact that an entire community of women collaborated on such a monumental undertaking challenges assumptions about female intellectual activity in the Middle Ages. The nuns at Hohenberg were engaged in more than just manuscript production. Their studies of medicine and natural history likely had practical applications in caring for the community's health and in cultivating the abbey's gardens for medicinal herbs. Their understanding of history and genealogy, as evidenced in the Hortus, also served to connect their community to a broader narrative of Christian tradition and secular events. Hohenberg Abbey, under Herod of Landsberg's guidance, stood as a vibrant example of a medieval convent where women pursued knowledge with an astonishing breadth and depth, contributing significantly to the intellectual and artistic heritage of the High Middle Ages. Its very existence and the Clamberty genius behind the Hortus Stelicarum speak to a world where female scholarship flourished, driven by curiosity, devotion, and a profound desire to learn. Number 5. Quedlinburg Abbey, Saxony, Anhalt, Germany. Quedlinburg Abbey, founded in 936 AD by Otto I, the first Holy Roman Emperor, became one of the most prestigious and politically influential female institutions in medieval Germany. Governed by a succession of powerful abbesses, often from the royal family, Quedlinburg held imperial immediacy, meaning it answered directly to the emperor, not a local bishop. This unique status granted it immense political and economic power, which in turn allowed it to become a significant center of learning and cultural patronage. The abbey's royal connections ensured a steady influx of resources, including precious books and scholarly materials, cementing its position as an intellectual powerhouse. Curriculum at Quedlinburg was exceptionally broad, reflecting its aristocratic patronage and administrative responsibilities. Nuns received a rigorous education in Latin, enabling them to engage with theology, classical literature, and legal texts. Greek was also studied, providing access to a wider range of philosophical and religious sources. The study of history was paramount, as the abbesses and their community were deeply involved in imperial politics and dynastic affairs. The Annals of Quedlinburg, a significant historical chronicle compiled by the nuns, serves as a primary source for the Ottonian and Salian dynasties, demonstrating their keen interest in and sophisticated understanding of contemporary events. Mathematics was essential for managing the abbey's vast estates and for understanding complex architectural principles, as the abbey oversaw significant building projects. The library at Quedlinburg Abbey was renowned, containing a substantial collection of religious, historical, and classical texts. The scriptorium was active and productive, with nuns meticulously copying and illuminating manuscripts. Their work was characterized by high artistic quality and textual accuracy. The production of the Annals of Quedlinburg itself was a monumental undertaking, requiring extensive research, careful collation of information, and sophisticated narrative construction. This was not merely transcription, it was original historical scholarship, reflecting the nuns' advanced literacy, critical thinking, and their ability to synthesize information from various sources. The Annals provide valuable insights into the political, social, and religious landscape of 10th and 11th century Germany, directly from the perspective of an institution at the heart of imperial power. The intellectual contributions of Quedlinburg's abbesses and nuns extended beyond historical writing. As leaders of an imperial abbey, they were deeply involved in legal and administrative matters, necessitating a profound understanding of canon law, civil law, and feudal obligations. Their management of vast territories, numerous vassals, and significant wealth required exceptional literacy, numeracy, and diplomatic skills. Abbesses like Adelheid I, daughter of Otto I, and Agnes II, a skilled goldsmith and patron of the arts, were not only spiritual leaders, but also astute politicians and administrators. Their correspondence with emperors, popes, and other rulers speaks to their refined rhetorical abilities and their engagement with the highest levels of medieval society. Quedlinburg also functioned as an elite educational institution for noblewomen across the Holy Roman Empire. Daughters of emperors, kings, and powerful nobles were sent there to receive a comprehensive education that prepared them for roles as abbesses of other convents, influential wives, or advisors at court. This education included not only academic subjects, but also practical skills in administration, diplomacy, and the arts, particularly music and needlework, which were elevated to high art forms within the abbey. The artistic output of Quedlinburg, including intricate textiles and metalwork, further attests to the high level of technical and creative education available to the nuns. Their detailed knowledge of heraldry and noble genealogies was crucial for their roles within the imperial court. The abbey's influence was significant, not just locally, but throughout the empire. Abbesses participated in imperial diets and often served as regents or advisors to emperors. This active political engagement, often in conjunction with their scholarly pursuits, made Quedlinburg a unique example of a female institution where intellectual power translated directly into secular authority. The nuns at Quedlinburg exemplified how deep learning combined with strong leadership could create a powerful center of influence, shaping both the religious and political landscape of their time. The rich tapestry of learning woven within its walls, from historical chronicles to legal expertise, marks Quedlinburg Abbey as a prime example of female intellectual flourishing in the medieval world. Number 4. Gandersheim, Lower Saxony, Germany. Gandersheim Abbey, founded in 852 AD by Duke Liudolf of Saxony and his wife Oda, became one of the most prominent imperial convents in the Ottonian Empire. Like Quedlinburg, it enjoyed imperial immediacy and close ties to the ruling dynasty, ensuring its wealth and influence. However, Gandersheim is particularly celebrated for fostering one of the most remarkable female intellectuals of the medieval period. Hradzvít of Gandersheim, often considered the first female playwright in the Latin West. Her existence and prolific output firmly establish Gandersheim as an extraordinary center of classical learning and literary creativity for women. The very fact that Hradzvít chose to write plays in Latin, echoing the style of ancient Roman dramatists like Terence, is a testament to the rigorous classical education available to the nuns. The curriculum at Gandersheim was deeply rooted in the liberal arts, with a strong emphasis on Latin rhetoric and classical literature. Nuns studied the works of classical authors such as Terence, Virgil, Horace, and Boethius, not merely for linguistic proficiency but for their literary and philosophical content. This deep engagement with ancient texts provided a foundation for Hradzvít's own literary endeavors. They also studied Greek, which was crucial for accessing early Christian and philosophical texts. Theology, of course, formed the bedrock of their education, encompassing scripture, patristics, and early medieval commentaries. Arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy were pursued for their practical applications in chronology, architecture, and understanding the divine order of the cosmos. Music was also a vital part of their education, with the nuns skilled in liturgical chant and likely engaged in musical theory. Hradzvít of Gandersheim stands as the brightest star in Gandersheim's intellectual firmament. Active in the late 10th century, she authored a remarkable collection of works, including 8 legends in verse, like Maria, 6 plays in prose, such as Dulcidius and Paphnutius, 2 historical poems of Zesta Atonis and Primordia Coenobii, Gandershmensis, and various other poems. Her plays, written to offer Christian alternatives to classical Roman comedies, are particularly significant. They demonstrate an unparalleled mastery of Latin, a keen understanding of dramatic structure, and a bold intellectual spirit that dared to engage with secular forms for sacred purposes. Her ability to craft complex narratives, develop characters, and convey theological messages through dramatic dialogue, speaks volumes about the literary training she received at Gandersheim. The scriptorium at Gandersheim was instrumental in preserving and disseminating Hetschesvit's works, along with numerous other manuscripts. Nuns acted as scribes, meticulously copying her writings and other important texts. The very act of copying classical and Christian texts honed their linguistic skills and deepened their understanding of complex ideas. The abbey's library was well stocked, providing the rich intellectual environment necessary for someone like Hritsvit to flourish. The abbesses, often powerful figures with close ties to the imperial court, actively fostered this scholarly atmosphere, providing the resources and encouragement for such intellectual pursuits. The intellectual life at Gandersheim extended to a critical engagement with historical narratives. Hritsvit's historical poems, for instance, chronicle the deeds of the Ottonian emperors and the history of her own abbey, providing invaluable primary sources. This required not only literary skill, but also a rigorous approach to historical research and documentation. The nuns were involved in record-keeping, chronicling events, and preserving genealogies, demonstrating their advanced literacy and administrative capabilities. Their understanding of history and political events was crucial, given the abbey's prominent role within the Holy Roman Empire. Gandersheim Abbey also served as an important educational institution for the daughters of the German nobility. These young women received a comprehensive education in the liberal arts, preparing them for influential roles in society, whether as future abbesses or as wives and mothers who would shape the intellectual landscape of their own households. The high standards of scholarship maintained at Gandersheim meant that its graduates were among the most educated women of their time, capable of engaging in sophisticated intellectual discourse. The abbey's continued prominence for centuries does its enduring commitment to female education and scholarly excellence. Hritsvit's legacy alone ensures Gandersheim's place in history as a beacon of medieval female intellect, proving that convents were not just places of prayer, but dynamic centers of literary and academic innovation, where women were not only educated but empowered to create lasting works of art and scholarship. Number 3. Rupertsberg, Rhineland, Palatinate, Germany. Convent of Rupertsberg, established in 1150 AD by Hildegard of Bingen, stands as a testament to the intellectual and spiritual power of one of the most extraordinary women of the Middle Ages. After a period of significant conflict with the male monks at Dissebadenberg, Hildegard, then an abbess, led her community of nuns to an independent foundation on the Rupertsberg Hill near Bingen. This move allowed her to create an intellectual environment precisely tailored to her visionary and scholarly pursuits, making Rupertsberg not just a convent but a thriving center of scientific inquiry, artistic unique, and profound theological thought, all under her unique leadership. The curriculum at Rupertsberg, while rooted in traditional monastic education, was profoundly shaped by Hildegard's encyclopedic mind. Nuns studied Latin rigorously, essential for accessing the vast body of theological works, and for Hildegard's own extensive correspondence and compositions. However, the intellectual breadth went far beyond mere theological study. Hildegard was deeply interested in natural philosophy, medicine, and cosmology. Her works, Physica on the natural world and Causae et Curae on medicine and healing, demonstrate an empirical approach to understanding the world, classifying plants, animals, and minerals, and detailing their medicinal properties. This indicates that the nuns at Rupertsberg were engaged in systematic study of the natural world, likely involving observation, experimentation, and the compilation of detailed knowledge, a remarkably advanced practice for the time. The scriptorium at Rupertsberg was a hive of intense activity, producing not only numerous copies of Hildegard's major visionary works, Scivias, Liber Vitae Meritorum, Liber Divinorum Aberum, but also her scientific treatises, her musical compositions, and her extensive correspondence. Nuns served as scribes, illuminators, and possibly even researchers, aiding Hildegard in her monumental literary output. The exquisite illuminations accompanying her visionary texts were often designed under her direct instruction, reflecting her complex theological and cosmological insights. This artistic collaboration bursts the high level of skill and artistic training available to the nuns. The meticulous nature of their work ensured the preservation and dissemination of Hildegard's unique intellectual contributions across Europe, transforming Rupertsberg into a powerhouse of knowledge dissemination. Hildegard of Bingen herself was a polymath, a theologian, mystic, composer, philosopher, natural scientist, and medical practitioner. Her letters, addressed to popes, emperors, and abbots, demonstrate her rhetorical skill and her willingness to engage with the most powerful figures of her day, often offering stern spiritual advice or theological commentary. Her musical compositions, particularly the Symphonia Harmoniae Celestium Revelation, Symphony of the Harmony of Celestial Revelations, are unparalleled in their complexity and beauty, indicating that the nuns at Rupertsberg were highly skilled musicians, engaged in both theoretical and practical aspects of music. They were not merely performers, but active participants in the creation and interpretation of complex musical forms. The intellectual life at Rupertsberg also encompassed the development of a unique language, the lingua ignota, unknown language, which Hildegard created as a secret spiritual language, accompanied by its own alphabet. This linguistic innovation suggests a profound interest in semiotics and the power of language, a further testament to the intellectual curiosity fostered within the convent. While its practical use was limited, its creation speaks to a community pushing the boundaries of conventional thought. The nuns were also likely involved in the preparation of medicines and herbal remedies, applying the knowledge found in Physica and Causae et Curae for the benefit of the community and local populace. This practical application of scientific knowledge was a key aspect of their learning. Rupertsberg remained a vibrant intellectual and spiritual center throughout Hildegard's long life and beyond. Its legacy is inextricably linked to her genius, but it is important to remember that she relied heavily on her community of nuns, who facilitated her work through their diligent scribal efforts, their musical performances, and their administrative support. Convent provided the stable and intellectually stimulating environment necessary for such groundbreaking work to occur. Rupertsberg stands as a powerful example of how a monastic community under visionary leadership could become a crucible for profound intellectual, scientific, and artistic innovation driven by the collective scholarship and dedication of its female inhabitants. It was a place where the boundaries of knowledge were actively explored, leaving an indelible mark on medieval thought. Number 2. San Zaccaria, Venice, Italy. Benedictine convent of San Zaccaria in Venice, founded in the 9th century, was one of the most powerful and influential female monastic institutions in the Venetian Republic. Its history is interwoven with that of Venice itself. From its earliest days, San Zaccaria received lavish donations from doges and wealthy families, transforming it into a vast repository of land, wealth, and critically knowledge. Its abbesses, often drawn from the most prominent Venetian noble families, were not just spiritual leaders, but formidable political figures, administrators, and patrons of the arts and letters. The very makeup of Venetian society, with its intricate blend of mercantile power and aristocratic lineage, was reflected within the walls of San Zaccaria, making it a unique intellectual and administrative powerhouse. Curriculum at San Zaccaria was designed to educate the daughters of Venice's elite, preparing them not only for monastic life, but also for positions of influence within society. Nuns studied Latin and Greek with proficiency, enabling them to engage with classical literature, patristic writings, and the complex theological debates of the time. Given Venice's role as a maritime power and a bridge between East and West, it is plausible that some nuns also had exposure to other languages crucial for trade and diplomacy. Mathematics was essential for managing the convent's immense estates, its complex financial transactions, and for maintaining its extensive legal documents. Astronomy, though perhaps not as central as in other convents, would have been relevant for understanding the celestial order and calendrical calculations. Music was a significant part of their daily life, with the nuns trained in sophisticated chant and likely in musical theory. The library at San Zaccaria was exceptionally rich, housing an extensive collection of manuscripts and later printed books. Its strategic location in Venice, a major hub for trade and intellectual exchange, meant that the convent had access to a wide array of texts from across Europe and the Byzantine Empire. The scriptorium was active, producing high-quality liturgical books, theological commentaries, and historical chronicles. The nuns were skilled scribes and illuminators, and their work contributed to the preservation and dissemination of knowledge. Beyond direct textual production, the convent's abbesses were major patrons of learning and the arts, commissioning elaborate works of art, architecture, and scholarly texts, further enriching the intellectual environment. The intellectual life of San Zaccaria was deeply intertwined with its administrative and political responsibilities. The abbess of San Zaccaria held exceptional privileges, including the right to receive the Doge in a special ceremony on Easter Monday, a unique honor that underscored her political significance. Managing the convent's vast wealth, property, and legal affairs required a profound understanding of civil and canon law, as well as sophisticated financial acumen. The nuns, often serving as scribes, treasurers, and advisors to the abbess, were actively involved in these complex administrative tasks, demonstrating their advanced literacy, numeracy, and organizational skills. They were astute negotiators, capable of defending the convent's interests in legal disputes and political maneuvers. San Zaccaria served as a premier educational institution for the daughters of the Venetian nobility. These young women received a comprehensive education that went beyond religious instruction, encompassing history, literature, rhetoric, and a sophisticated understanding of worldly affairs. This education prepared them not only for lives of prayer, but also for influential roles within Venetian society. Many of these women would go on to become powerful abbesses of San Zaccaria or other convents, or, if they returned to secular life, they would bring their intellectual prowess and administrative skills to their families, influencing the cultural and intellectual landscape of the convent's emphasis on refined manners and courtly knowledge, alongside academic subjects, shaped a sophisticated elite. The nuns at San Zaccaria also engaged in historical record-keeping and sometimes original composition. Their chronicles would have detailed the history of the convent, the lives of prominent abbesses, and significant events in Venetian history, providing invaluable insights into the period. Their deep engagement with theology and philosophy allowed them to contribute to the religious discourse of the time, even if their individual works are not always attributed. The very existence of such a powerful and intellectually vibrant female institution in a highly commercial and politically active city like Venice speaks volumes about the opportunities for female scholarship and leadership in the medieval period. San Zaccaria stands as a testament to the fact that convents could be centers of immense temporal power and intellectual sophistication, where women of the highest caliber pursued knowledge and influenced the destiny of one of Europe's most important cities. Number 1. Chelles Abbey, Seine-et-Marne, France. Chelles Abbey, located near Paris, was one of the oldest and most historically significant female monasteries in medieval France, with roots stretching back to the Merovingian period. Founded in the late 7th century by Queen Bathilde, the wife of Clovis II, it quickly became a royal convent, attracting noblewomen from across Francia and beyond. Its close ties to the Merovingian and later Carolingian dynasties ensured its immense wealth patronage and, crucially, its status as a premier center of learning and manuscript production. Chelles was not merely a spiritual retreat, It was a powerful institution that played a critical role in the intellectual and cultural revival of the early Middle Ages, particularly during the Carolingian Renaissance. Curriculum at Chelles was exceptionally rigorous and comprehensive, reflecting its royal patronage and its mission as a leading educational institution for women. Nuns immersed themselves in the study of Latin, not just for liturgical purposes, but as the universal language of scholarship, enabling them to read and copy classical authors, patristic writings, and theological treatises. Crucially, Chelles was one of the few places in the early medieval West where Greek was also studied with considerable proficiency. This was largely due to the influence of Anglo-Saxon scholars, who had connections to Chelles and brought Greek texts with them, providing the nuns with unparalleled access to a broader range of philosophical and theological thought, including the works of the Greek Church Fathers. They also studied Hebrew, a truly rare pursuit for the time, allowing them to engage with the Old Testament in its original language. The scriptorium at Chelles was one of the most active and important in Western Europe during the Carolingian period. Nuns were highly skilled scribes, illuminators, and even textual scholars. They meticulously copied a vast array of manuscripts, including biblical texts, liturgical books, patristic commentaries, historical chronicles, and classical works. Quality of their calligraphy and illumination was renowned, contributing significantly to the aesthetic and intellectual standards of Carolingian manuscript production. Many important texts that circulated throughout Europe during the Carolingian Renaissance are believed to have been copied or preserved at Chelles. The careful collation and correction of texts by the nuns ensured their accuracy and fidelity, demonstrating their advanced textual scholarship. The intellectual contributions of the nuns at Chelles extended beyond mere copying. They were actively involved in the preservation and dissemination of knowledge during a period of relative intellectual decline in many parts of Europe. Their work in the scriptorium was a vital link in the chain of knowledge transmission from antiquity to the High Middle Ages. Some scholars argue that the nuns at Chelles might have also been involved in original composition, such as hymns, devotional poetry, or even minor historical chronicles, though specific attributions are rare from this early period. The very existence of such a high-level scriptorium, consistently producing sophisticated texts, indicates a profound and sustained intellectual life within the convent. Chelles Abbey also served as a critical educational institution for the daughters of the Frankish aristocracy and even foreign royalty. These young women received an education that was unparalleled for its time, covering not only religious instruction but also advanced literacy, classical studies, music, and the arts. Many future abbesses of other convents received their training at Chelles, spreading its intellectual influence throughout Francia. The nuns' understanding of history, genealogy, and the intricacies of courtly life would have been crucial for educating these noble women, who were often destined for influential roles in a turbulent political landscape. The abbey's library was a vital resource for this educational mission, providing access to a wealth of knowledge. The abbesses of Chelles were often powerful figures, highly educated and influential. For instance, Gisela, sister of Charlemagne, served as abbess in the late 8th century. Her presence alone goes the abbey's intellectual prestige. As Charlemagne was a great patron of learning, close ties to the Carolingian court meant that Chelles was at the forefront of the intellectual revival championed by Charlemagne, actively participating in the production of accurate biblical texts and standardized liturgical books. The nuns' ability to manage vast estates and significant wealth also points to their sophisticated understanding of administration law and economics, skills honed through their rigorous education. Chelles Abbey stands as a monumental example of a medieval convent that was not just a center of spiritual devotion, but a dynamic engine of scholarship, preservation, and education, playing a foundational role in the intellectual history of early medieval Europe. Its legacy illuminates a vibrant tradition of female learning that shaped the cultural and intellectual landscape of its era.